Lisa Travnik. I'm Chief Growth Officer here at Sourcemap, and I'm thrilled to be here with today's lineup. We appreciate all of you being here for all of these topics. For this session, we're going to kind of cover the topic of AI in supply chain and transparency. AI is everywhere. I think we're in the third or fourth hype circle here, but it seems to be here to stay. And as we've already alluded to today, there are a number of ways in which AI can be used to improve everything in terms of supply chain mapping and transparency and enhance the ease of sharing information, gathering information, and information accuracy. So we wanted to make sure we covered that today and to cover this topic. We have Evan Paul here, Director of Innovation for Nature, I believe is the title, which I love.
Yep.
I'm with Salesforce. So thanks, Evan, for being here. And then, of course, our own Leo Bonanni from SourceMap, who's been looking at this topic, I think, for as long as we've been in business. So I'll just leave it to you two. I'll be here in the background looking at Q&A and helping guide some of the topics. But I'll hand it over to Evan to introduce himself.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Great to virtually meet you all. So yeah, I'm on the nature team at Salesforce. So that's within our sustainability organization under our Chief Impact Officer, Suzanne DeBianca. My background, for 10 years, I was in environmental policy, a combination of advocacy and multi-stakeholder work around environmental policy. And then in grad school, made the pivot into tech. And the last 15 years have been in a variety of product management and innovation roles, all focused on tech for good. At Salesforce, my work bridges our sustainability and impact team with our product teams and looks at what's not in our product and not on our roadmap should be. And I do the early discovery, validation, prototyping around what we might build, who we might partner with to solve for emerging use cases. And then on nature, those are zeroed in on nature-related use cases. So EUDR is one of them, but looking at other things related to nature disclosures with a task force on nature, financial disclosures, science-based targets for nature, and other national and regional regulations that are emerging that are specifically going after biodiversity.
Great. Evan, thanks so much for being here. Uh, just a couple of things as a means of introduction. I think would love to learn about where AI fits in your strategy, but maybe to set a little bit of context before you share the AI story is also, I don't know that everybody is aware of what Salesforce does in terms of sustainability. Everyone knows the CRM. Can you just give a little bit of a synopsis on where you are with the net zero cloud and your nature projects in general before we talk about specifically how AI is factoring in?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years ago, sustainability became the fifth value of Salesforce, which for Salesforce is a big deal. Our corporate values basically give license to our 70,000 plus employees to go for it and try stuff out, start incorporating into their work in a variety of ways. But that was really kind of the culmination of a lot of work over the 25 years at Salesforce around climate in particular. So Mark Benioff has really endeavored to make Salesforce a bleeding edge leader on climate disclosures, setting science-based targets around climate. And so we had been doing our own carbon accounting for several years, looked to how we could productize that, launched that years ago as Sustainability Cloud, now called Net Zero Cloud. Used by hundreds of enterprises to measure, manage, disclose their carbon and ESG metrics. And then nature has emerged on the corporate agenda for Salesforce, like many companies in recent years, because of massive change we're seeing in biodiversity around the world. So, nearly 70% of wildlife species collapsing since 1970. Latin America in particular, seeing a 94% collapse in average population abundance, and in particular, freshwater species dropping by 83%. So at Davos, at all the big, elite summits, they start to talk about this flashing red light that we're seeing. And so we created a nature team at Salesforce to investigate and work on our role in trying to help. We created a nature positive strategy a year and a half ago. to clean up our own act on nature, which is mostly about the water impacts of data centers, manage our commitment as part of the Trillion Tree Initiative. So we're giving $100 million in restoration, and our team does all the due diligence around those projects and works with partners to get restoration projects implemented around the world. And then my work, looking at our customers and where can we help our customers go further faster, leveraging Salesforce technology.
Great. It's a broad suite, and so then I mean, we years ago we started using AI to do the first satellite monitoring of land, farms, and forests for deforestation. I think that was one of the first very promising uses of AI for responsible sourcing. We've also seen a rise in the amount of technology available to scan documents, to verify authenticity of traceability, of chain of custody of products. But what we're talking about today is a sort of the next step in AI, moving into a much more dynamic use of these tools. And we're basically here to speculate also about where AI could plug in to responsible sourcing to help tackle the really heavy parts of the challenge that companies are facing. Do you want to give us a little bit of an overview of where AI is going from the Salesforce perspective?
Yeah, so AI has been a big part of Salesforce's product strategy for a number of years. For anybody not familiar with Salesforce, the core products are sales, service, marketing, and commerce. We also acquired Tableau, a data analytics firm, several years ago, MuleSoft, integration platform several years ago, and Slack as well for collaboration. And AI has been used throughout. The typical way that AI is used is what's called for predictive analytics. So in a commerce setting, if this customer bought these 5 things, these are the 6th, 7th, 8th things they're more likely to buy than average. So those kinds of predictions, leveraging large data sets to give you greater confidence over time, but not just in commercial interactions. We've got a health cloud solution used for patient advising and other and managing clinical trials, et cetera. There, what you're predicting are health outcomes, and to what degree, if we do these set of interventions, would that patient be more likely to be successful in their health goals, et cetera. So that all represents predictive analytics, and we've gotten really good at that. It's basically using statistics at scale with large data. Then the world wakes up to generative AI, and everybody starts playing with ChatGPT, and we realize that it's similar but different in a whole set of ways. It's similar in that we're using statistics to basically predict the next likely word that's going to come through a whole set of training data from the public web and some private, and I'll set aside some of the controversy around licensing content, et cetera, that some actors may or may not have done a great job doing to train those large language models. But the fundamental idea was, how can we predict language? And if we can predict it, we can actually start generating. So that's where we start getting generative language models, generative image, generative video, and with varying degrees. Sometimes it felt like a funhouse mirror with hallucination and an extra arm on a character, et cetera. So it was a different thing. It was making predictions of what is this image based on a prompt should look like. If I want to have an image of a cat wearing a mouse suit, what should that look like? And it got better and better at doing that. And we kind of all recognize that as like the second wave of AI hitting commercial application. And you started to get some better chatbot kind of experiences with that. What we're now seeing is a third wave emerging. And it's pretty exciting and pretty daunting, where you're combining the reasoning and logic of predictive AI with the generative ability to have natural language interactions with a computer of large language models, and we're starting to knit the two together. So that an agent, we're calling this an agent, because essentially the computer will be able to take autonomous action. It will be able to make a plan, work according to that plan, get some feedback in an interaction it's having with another system, another agent, another human, see if things are going to plan or not, adapt and adjust and change the plan and try something different, again, using probabilistic statistics. And that is a whole new thing that humans haven't really had the ability done before. We're starting to get really into like sci-fi land with this stuff. For Salesforce, it's massive. It's a huge disruption, and we're doing the kind of disrupt yourself, or else somebody else is going to do it. So when you're thinking about, okay, I wish I had a call center that could call everybody that visited my website to see if anybody wants to buy anything. Well, you can do that with agents now. You probably couldn't afford to do that with people. If in a customer service setting, I would love to have personalized interactions where somebody calls my help number, and instead of navigating a, 5-step, set of keys to get to the right department, they can just start talking to a voice that sounds natural, knows a lot of context about me because it's pulled up my phone number, can see my prior purchase history, a whole set of things, and can just immediately start addressing my problem. So we're starting to see agents emerge as a concept. At Dreamforce a few weeks ago, we have really started to productize this and package it. It's called Agentforce, where we're rolling out a whole suite of agents across not only our tier 1 products, sales, service, commerce, Tableau. So for example, that data analyst agent working alongside you in Tableau to help you analyze data sets and recommend different visualizations. But then we're also applying it to a whole set of over 100 different industry specific use cases. So we're using generative AI and then moving into agents and ESG reporting in Net Zero Cloud. We're using it in healthcare and education. One of the coolest examples in education that I've seen of an agent is Khan Academy having an agent-based tutor, where the tutor is there working alongside the student and guiding them, not just telling them the answer, but guiding them along to help them figure out a hard math problem. It is legitimately a new wave. Yes, we're on the hype cycle. Yes, there will be some disillusionment, but the pieces are really coming together in some pretty incredible ways, and the potential is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I think for us, the potential here is huge. It's a huge relief because I think your analogy about calling everybody who visits your website is akin to the issue we have in supply chain mapping. But when our customer invites one supplier to SourceMap, then 5 to 25 more suppliers get invited by virtue of the cascading of the inviting the suppliers who invite their suppliers who invite their suppliers. And so as much as we have an expert team and they use all the tools that are available to email and call and train all of these newly discovered suppliers, these are fast growing. We have an exponential growth in the number of indirect suppliers, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. And what adds to the complexity, in fact, that's why we had to build a team that speaks a whole bunch of languages, is that they're all in different countries. They all have different levels of technical literacy, access to technology. They all have different levels of understanding of the regulations that they're being asked to comply with. And then they all have to be trained in the software, and they all have to be reminded to provide data in a timely, accurate, complete way. So this dream of having agents, for us, it's not just who visits our website, but then it's all of the people who they know, who now are their suppliers, who now we have to onboard, align, and then just like you mentioned with the Tableau agents, we even have to help them out with the data. Are there issues in the data? Why did this farm flag as potentially having deforestation? What can we do about it? What kind of remediations can be put in place? So there's I guess, writ large, so now that responsible sourcing isn't just about your tier 1 suppliers, but it's about everybody else in the supply chain. You can't hire enough people to be in communication with all your tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, 6, and 7 suppliers. You need help. And that's a conversational relationship. It can't really be a one-to-many because every supplier has a different context. So for me, the most exciting thing about this push towards agents and our partnership with Salesforce in general is this ability to think about the future of supplier relationship management, which is managing indirect suppliers, making sure they understand the full context of why they're doing this. And so I just wanted to plug that for us agents, and the whole supplier outreach effort would be impossible as we see the scale required by EUDR and some of the other regulations without resorting to agents of some kind.
Yeah, 100%. And just to build on that, if we play our cards right and we get this technology right, then you could imagine it actually becomes an incredibly inclusive technology as well, because you could, one, match the modality. Does somebody want to talk by voice or talk by, WhatsApp or talk, through some other channel? All those are possible using the same exact system. How can we match the literacy level and the dialect? Um, you know, ChatGPT is trained on Swahili. Like, it's really incredible technology. Our ability to immediately adapt because it's an AI-based system that a human just wouldn't be able to do. Oh, this individual, they're at a third grade reading level, so let me, generate some imagery to help them walk through this questionnaire so they can choose between different images instead of just text, for example. So the adaptability, the flexibility, the responsiveness, the being able to quickly to have an expert level intelligence with very pedestrian level communication, like to align those two, um, it's really remarkable when we start to play this out. And again, if we get our play the cards right, if we keep open systems and strong interoperability and all the best practices around that, and get the data use rights, data privacy rights, if we thread those needles and put those pieces together, yeah, I think this could be an incredibly inclusive technology to drive supply chain transparency, engagement, and get more resources and connection to the global economy to the folks farthest from it currently.
Look, I mean, as part of, I don't know if people on the line know this, but for the Net Zero Cloud, Sourcemap is providing the EUDR functionality that you'll be bringing to market with your customers. With the EUDR in particular, I know that there's been a huge learning curve in terms of the companies that are subject to the law, understanding how to comply with it. And then we can only imagine the learning curve of all the suppliers, many of whom are not in countries that are subject to the law directly, now having to sort of collaborate and provide what is really a huge amount of very specific kinds of data in order to be part of this compliant supply chain. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about where Salesforce is playing in terms of UDR, and if anything, if you can see any of the potential for AI there.
Yeah. So we very much take a platform approach to sustainability. And by that, I mean, we provide some core tooling to enable a variety of different data sources to be integrated together, and then help to configure that for what our customers need in particular contexts. Because with enterprise software, everybody's using slightly different stacks. And so we want to, sometimes our metaphor is, we're the Lego box where we're looking to mix and match the different Lego pieces. And on EUDR, we reached out to SourceMap because we had seen that they're already working with a lot of our largest customers on these kinds of issues. We did not want to become an expert on EUDR, the regulation. And so we're integrating that into our overall supplier engagement around sustainability disclosures, things like order management and other workflows that make sense in a Salesforce context where those records need to be attached for a particular shipment, et cetera. So the partnership made a ton of sense in that respect. Where I think you could see agents, again, disclosure, none of this is on the roadmap, where I think you could see agents start to play in the years to come is with a given supplier in a given location with a given context, much more curated engagement around them. So not necessarily just generic questionnaires, but, oh, in that place, we actually know a whole set of stuff. So let me just ask a small set of things about this. However, because we also have this regenerative ag initiative, let me ask them a set of questions about their regenerative ag practices. Because recently there was a change in national policy around labor relations, let me ask if they're compliant with that. So because the world is complex and we're dealing with change all the time in standards and regulations and insight and data availability, I think agents can play a crucial role in curating the right set of engagement and the right kinds of questions to be asking a particular supplier and the supply chain that's most relevant and essential for them. And because these systems learn quickly, they can figure out the right way to ask them that gets towards the right outcome. So when you get into regenerative ag practices, it gets quite complex by commodity, by soil type, and all kinds of stuff. An agent can hang with that complexity and ask very, very like contextually relevant questions that would require just incredibly well-educated agronomists on your staff to be able to hang with that. And that's just for like regen ag, much less EUDR compliance and human rights and labor and all the other things that we may want to know from a supplier. That adaptability and flexibility and expert in many different domains, that aspect of agents is going to be pretty wild.
I think I totally agree. I think it's full of great ideas what you just said. And when people think of EUDR, they mostly focus on the mapping and the deforestation monitoring, which is a huge piece of work, and especially in some of the new materials that those industries just haven't been routinely doing the polygon GPS mapping of every farm and every forest. And so there's a big challenge there, but another side of the challenge is this legality requirement, which speaks to a lot of what you just mentioned, which is how do you make sure that every supplier is adhering to the local laws as about a whole bunch of issues, including land rights and sustainability and indigenous rights. And so it's a super complex nut to crack. It's essentially legal consultative work at the individual producer level. And we have containers coming into Europe that have 40, 50, 60, 70,000 producers tied to them. And so how do you, to adhere to the letter of the law, you need to show that all of those producers have been able to provide enough data to show that they're complying with local laws. And so a huge challenge, impossible to do it with auditors, impossible to have enough of a responsible sourcing team to do it. And there just isn't a registry. To your point, the laws are changing in each of these countries. So every day there's something new. There's also new programs that can serve as proxies, certification schemes, testing, audits, government documents become available, registries go live. Sometimes they go down. So that whole legality aspect of the EUDR is such a big and complex issue, and it's one that I think is best served through a kind of a contextual engine to do all of that really narrative data gathering that we have to do to show that no piece of the supply chain has been no piece has been left behind.
100%. How are we doing on time? Because I could build on that one in particular. Yeah.
Keep going. We've got about 7 minutes to go.
Cool. So when you look at the direction of travel on regulation, land use is becoming central on issues of water, biodiversity, carbon, embedded carbon in the landscape, et cetera. So with the Cunning Montreal biodiversity framework that was announced a couple of years ago, goal number 1 was integrated land use planning. And then, and I've met with a bunch of peer companies, and we're like, that sounds great. How do we operationalize? How could we support that? Oh my God, that means every place where you have a footprint has a different land use plan. And we have to figure out what do our local partners comply with that local land use plan? Are they supportive of it? Are we doing anything in opposition that is in opposition to it? There are ways of doing this with local regulatory staff that are going to be pretty ham-fisted, but using agents, the ability to understand spatially explicit relationships and the influence that a particular actor may be having on it in a either destructive way or in a nature positive way, going well beyond what you could see by satellite, but other kinds of pressures they might be creating on the ecosystem. Trying to do that at scale and in a contextually place-based way is only going to be, that's the kind of thing that an agent could do, that like if you really wanted to do it, to really bend the curve on biodiversity place by place, and really measure biodiversity. There are policies in the UK and some other places where the idea is called biodiversity net gain, where we're starting to use habitat proxies and then incentivize and require improvements in local biodiversity in that place, but they're just using, again, what you can see with a satellite. So hedgerows, for example, it's not really biodiversity. with agents and AI, you can actually start to measure biodiversity and get a whole set of sensors out there, eDNA, bioacoustics, all kinds of other technology. And then an agent can really measure, manage, nudge, guide a particular farmer, a particular processor in a place to drive best practices and make sure that they are contributing to nature positive outcomes and can't ignore them anymore.
That's great. I mean, look, yeah, it's one thing to meet the burden of the regulation. It's another to say what then. And so I'm not deforesting in my supply chain, green light for the regulators. But now what can I do to improve conditions from a biodiversity, from a nature perspective, but also economically and productivity? Well, how do I get better yields on less land, which is one of the key steps to opening up more land for nature. And so I can see a lot of potential to not just correct the illegal parts of the supply chain, but actually make the rest net positive. Great. Well, look, I just have, I guess we'll just do one last question, which is in your opinion or your official position, how far out is this reality? When can we start to deploy the MVP, the first version of these agents in the sustainability sphere?
Yeah, so we have agents live today for a lot of our core use cases, sales, service, marketing, commerce. We're launching ESG related agents in February that anybody using Salesforce tech should engage with, play around with. We've got free resources on Trailhead where you can build your own agent and just try it out. Again, this is the phase where low stakes learning, etc. I think some of the barriers. So I think there are going to be a few different barriers to really to adoption on this. One is going to be folks learning the right mix of, what's the right platform I should leverage for this? How much in-house talent do I have to really build this stuff out and contextualize it with our knowledge and information, our best practices, our policies, etc. So each company is going to kind of need to make their own formula around build versus buy versus partner and kind of how they go about engaging with this stuff. The other thing I'd say is there are a set of risks that are going to need to be addressed very forthrightly. So energy and water use, these are really energy intensive models, particularly the big ones. Luckily, we're figuring out smaller models actually are better for smaller tasks. And so you can have more purpose-built models and agents that are more task specific. So that'll reduce energy and water use. But if we do not mitigate the impacts of energy and water use of this kind of technology, we're going to be more part of the problem than the solution. So we've got to see renewable energy powered data centers. We got to see data centers not in water stressed areas, et cetera, to make sure we get way more upside than downside out of this technology.
Great. Look, I mean, from Sourcemap's perspective, we're thrilled to be partnering with you on EUDR. We'll be, hand raised to be part of that pilot of the agents starting in February. And I really thank you for all the important and super interesting work that you do. So thanks, Evan.
Yeah, thanks so much, Liam.